Great stuff. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, Kurt. Obviously, the first thing I need to say is I'm a fan here of everything AI. So, I've been a natural born kind of geek for a lot of years. So, I'm really interested in what it potentially can do because we're at a very early stage in the lifespan of AI. And so, to sort of set the scene really as we sort of crash into this, I'm trying to keep it very, very light on the theory, but at the same time, I thought it's useful to get a basic grounding of how we got here. And then I want to kind of move into what we're doing in BT Business right now as part of a project to understand what really is kind of viable about AI that we can do or potentially can do, because there are some guardrails, and I'll talk about those sort of very early in this conversation with you. Because there's this kind of natural inclination. I'm a marketer myself. I come from a marketing background, working with a hospitality company called Wyndham Worldwide, which runs a few hotels across the world. So I think there's a sort of, because we are naturally creative people, you see an opportunity and you want to rush in and grab it. But I think with this and with the business being quite tentative about what we can do with it, what I'm going to suggest throughout this presentation is, if anything that I say grabs you and you feel quite inspired by it, you want to go out and explore, do it on your own time and do it with personal projects. Because my thinking here is, we're going to get to a stage where we're going to be working with AI in quite a meaningful way here at BT. That time is not now, but it will be. So and I might mention again later on, we're starting trials in October with something called Microsoft 365 Copilot, which will look at all of the data across all of our Microsoft applications and pull that into a format that we can work with. If you're not part of that trial in October, then come the new year, dependent on whether it's seen as valuable or not, because it carries a cost, we'll roll that out across the group. And so that window between now and January, if everything goes to plan, is a great chance for you to look at some of the tools that we're going to explore today, kick the tires, see if you can get inspired by them, start thinking around things like prompts. You'll probably be familiar with what prompts are, or if not now, you will be later, to actually get the most from these tools and the opportunities that AI offers to us in the marketing discipline. So, like I say, personal opinions, not representative of BT Group. This is for information purposes only. And also, please do enjoy some of the ideas and things that I have done or stuff that's happening out there responsibly. Just quickly, not new AI. There was a checkers simulator created back in '51 by a guy from the University of Oxford, which used some archaic computing from the University of Manchester. I'm based at the Deansgate office, so not a million miles away from where I work. And this was me trying to ask Bard, which is Google's large language model. We'll get into LLMs in a minute. This was me asking Bard if it would remove the watermark from the image. And unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. The watermark was too small, but you'll be able to get to a point very, very soon where AI will be able to remove these sort of image-based aberrations. So it's coming. But just to reinforce that, we have been using AI in our world for ages, and this is a talk around generative AI, but AI is sort of much broader church. So you might have like a smart thermostat. Google Maps is everywhere. We use it every day. A good kind of example here of how there's something called hallucination in AI, which is where looking at patterns, which is essentially what AI is, it will deduce what it thinks to be the right answer in natural language. But here you've got advice to jet ski across the Pacific Ocean. Might be a stretch for me. Obviously, for most of you guys, I'm sure you do it in a minute, but for me, I don't think I'd take that on. We use AI a lot across BT at the moment in private environments in the cloud. So the guys over at Belfast Harbour are using it now, and this is kind of like a demo, a showcase for customers at one of the facilities at the docks, where you can point at a building, and through AI, it's done object recognition before and it's mapped out. It doesn't use geospatial coordinates. It uses AI to find patterns, what the buildings look like. You can find out what those buildings are. We've got an IoT website, iot.bt.com, which is where you can find out about all the different ways that artificial intelligence or silicon intelligence is being used across our partner base and how we offer solutions using AI as part of our Internet of Things proposition. Stop me anytime, any questions, ask questions later, by the way. This is a very casual conversation between you and me, so anything you want to know, please ask. Probably don't have the answer, but I can go away and find it for you. So this is where we're at right now. This is 2023. Since sort of March, when it started to get really exciting, generative artificial intelligence, which is about how you can create new content or data, code, images, video through trained models, which we call large language models. And just to show you how quick this has been, GPT-3, which was when people finally started going, oh, actually, maybe this new way of working with data, surfacing patterns, creating natural language outputs, maybe this is a thing, maybe this is going to help. And this was only like 3 years ago that it really started sort of warming up in its new world order. And since then, you've obviously had GPT 3.5, which came out last year, working under the wings on GPT-4, which is a much bigger model. And when we say bigger, and we'll go into this quickly, this is essentially saying how sophisticated the algorithm is in being able to deduce the answer that you're asking for or the image that you need from the training data that it's worked through. So you'll see, obviously, we've gone through Stable Diffusion, which is an image generation model. Midjourney, similar. ChatGPT came out in November last year, and that is the interface that we'll have a quick look at in a second. And then GPT-4, which is the kind of the cutting edge version of generative AI, and that's only just come out a few months ago. So this is the if you go to chat.openai.com, this is where you can go and enter this sort of weird world of generative AI and really sort of take your first steps. There'll be links to all the stuff that we'll talk about today right at the end. I'll share a pack with you, and we can always talk about it offline as well. If some of these things don't make sense, and I'm sure they won't because they still don't to me. But there's a little box at the bottom, and you'll type in anything you want. In the past, when I first came across this, I was doing things like, right, I've got a Canada trip coming up. It's 17 days. I'm flying into Toronto. It's in the autumn. I want to visit roughly these kind of places. Plan out an itinerary for me. And ChatGPT just came back and gave me some things. I was able to ask it questions about bus stops, where I need to go to get public transport, all this kind of stuff, and it got into that level of sophistication. Now, at the time, ChatGPT wasn't connected to the internet, so it was based on data that was kind of collected up until 2021, I think, at the time. It was a couple of years ago, so you can't get specifics. Like at the time, you couldn't book hotels using ChatGPT. Now you can with plugins if you get the pro version of ChatGPT, which is $20 a month. So there's so much more that's happening all the time, and that's the thing that we need to remember, is that this is changing by the day. I listened to a podcast called This Week in Startups, and Jason Calacanis has guests from across the world of AI startups all the time, pushing the envelope, finding new ways of building this out. So it's happening in a really exciting way. I'll skip past a lot of this stuff because I want to get to kind of the exciting bits and pieces, but you can have a look at this presentation later. If anybody wants a copy of this, let me know. Happy to share it. But fundamentally, we call it a neural network. That's what a large language model is. And it uses tons, millions and millions and millions of megabytes of data so that it can find patterns. And then when you ask it a question, it's looking back at what it knows and it's going, okay, what are the connections between what you're asking and what's happening out there at the moment? So you'll go, okay, so the input might be something like, I want to find out the top 10 cats by popularity in Chile. And it will look at all of the data that it's got. Just goes to show you how kind of arcane you can get. Go through all the data and sort of look for similarities in the data that it's been provided with that won't be like Google search, because it's got this corpus of data with all of this random unstructured content in it, and it'll be finding from your prompt similarities in what we call vectors, which is numbers and stuff. It's very, very difficult to understand, but fundamentally it's finding patterns in your prompt and then providing you with a solution in natural language. And this really just quickly goes into sort of the process of how a large language model is trained. It has that massive corpus of data. It gets specific with something called supervised learning, which it essentially gets rewarded when it finds the right answer. And as the model starts to grow in confidence, it starts to provide more and more of the right answers. Really quite mind-boggling as to where we are today. And again, more details around how by getting progressively specific with the training model, it gets more concrete, more confident in specific areas of the world. So for example, we've got LLMs now that are focused on healthcare. So there are radiologists that are using LLMs to identify patterns in scans, so that they, with AI in the loop, can generate better outcomes for their patients. Really quite amazing. And it uses a transformer architecture model, which essentially is slicing text down into its component atoms almost to present that information back to you. So again, we won't go into any detail, but this is just to give you a sense of when I'm saying it's quite complicated to explain, kind of really is. Parameters are just here. These are things that you might just quickly hear. This is about measuring the size and complexity of the large language model. So the more parameters, the theoretically better the response. But then obviously conversely, the more parameters, the heavier the LLM, the more compute or computing power it takes to run it, and therefore the more expensive LLMs are to run. So GPT-4, you'll notice, not available on the ChatGPT interface to use directly unless you pay for it. But GPT-4 is also built into Microsoft Bing, so you can use the very latest LLM for free, just using your Microsoft Bing chat. Tokens, again, are how you slice things out. And the reason why this is important is you get charged typically if you're using a model that involves some kind of API, which is a way of connecting the LLM to an application. And you'll get charged the more you ask it and the more the response contains text, if you will. So it just gives you an example there. When I typed in, what is the tagline for BT Business? And it comes back with BT Business tagline is we mean business. That costs just under a tenth of a cent, or just over a tenth of a cent, to generate that, to assimilate that output from the input. Go into some sort of stuff. You've probably heard of Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and DALL-E, and it all, how it works is a slightly different model, but this is the Qt version. Most of them use a diffusion model and a generative adversarial network, which essentially is like somebody who's like, is this the right image? And the adversary is going, nah, that's not the right image, try again. Using diffusion, it's creating a continuously speckled image and then trying to recreate the original image using patterns of data that it's learned from other images, billions of images, and which is why you've got loads of lawsuits at the moment from people like Getty Images saying, Christ, these images came from our gallery or our library, and that ain't great because we didn't give you permission. So there's a lot of questions around where LLMs go from here. So you've seen all this stuff. This was a video that I created. You probably can't hear that, but anyway, I created this video to explain to colleagues what APIs are, because I work in the API team within BT Business. And at the end of the day, this was a text to audio or text to speech tool, then using something called DID, which creates a video and maps the speech to a static photo and makes the photo speak. So I now manage to have Bill Gates, this is deep fakes at the end of the day, I have Bill Gates explaining to colleagues what APIs are using the idea of Rainbow Warriors to do so. Very, very weird, very spooky, but this is AI and it's not going anywhere. looking at time, quickly going to just explain this. In BT Business at the moment, I mentioned right at the start that we're looking into the viability of using AI to improve how we do things, from defining problem statements to writing copy to creating images for service design, which is essentially where we create end-to-end services or improve them, and loads and loads of different ways. So we've found lots and lots of different tools, different applications, data analytics, and we're going to do a little bit of that in a minute through something called Claude.ai, which is an LLM that will take a file and then look into the file, give you insights from it, from which you can then go off and build things like data visualization charts and stuff. Right, so next thing. So all of the stuff that we talked about so far is open LLMs. You may have heard of some of these things. So you've got Pi, which is from a company called Inflection AI. You've got Poe, which is the Quora LLM. Quora is like a massive Q&A like Reddit, but maybe slightly more grown up. Bard is obviously from Google. Llama is something that Facebook Meta put together. ChatGPT is OpenAI and Claude and Bing and stuff. But they're all public. And this is where kind of I'm the big flag wave for BT Group here, in that we can't, and you'll notice this if you're on a VPN and you're trying to get into bard.google.com, we cannot at the moment, or we shouldn't, or we probably ever will, add any kind of sensitive business data into a public LLM. We can't type anything that isn't public at the moment. You could probably, grey area, you could probably type in stuff that you can find on a BT website because that's in the public domain. But nothing inside the walls of BT can ever be entered into a public large language model like ChatGPT. Chiefly because the training is always ongoing, and anything you enter in could be regurgitated later down the line and find competitive eyes. So there's nothing that we can put in for now, for good, around BT into these public LLMs, which is why we're doing a lot of work at the moment on with people like Microsoft, people like Adobe, creating instances of large language models behind the scenes in our private cloud environment. So there's lots of stuff going on with, there's a recent event called Microsoft Inspire. You can check it out online. It's in the pack where it explains some of the features that are upcoming. We're one of 20 UK companies that are doing this trial in October that I mentioned at the start, which is where we're looking, or Sophie Tassell and Johnny Poole in the AI and data analytics team are looking for really good use cases for AI so that they can give trial access to people. So now, as well as exploring AI, now is the perfect time to connect with Sophie. Johnny leaves tomorrow for Lego. So, you know, if you want to go to the principal, you've got 24 hours. But Sophie's here forever. So Sophie Tassell is the woman to speak to if you've got a bright idea about how marketing can use AI. And who knows, she might give you the keys to the castle. I sincerely hope so. We've got Adobe as well, working on stuff with Adobe Analytics. So we have something called AI Assistant in Adobe Analytics. So if for whatever reason, if you're getting reports at the moment about anything that's happening digitally around marketing and you don't have the time to pull out the really good insights, then AI Assistant will be able to work with you to send you a different report or add on to the existing report and say, look, you notice that this is trending 20% higher than your expectations. Put goals in and it will say, look, you're 15% behind. This needs some work. Or we've noticed something on a page that isn't working so well, or that button's not being clicked. Why are you using it at all? All that sort of deep, granular, actionable insights is being made possible by Adobe Sensei. And the reason why we can use that is because that's in a very private architecture. It's not out there. It's not a public LLM. Right, so what we're kind of here for, and sorry, Kurt, for dragging this one on. I'm going to show you 3 ways of using AI that might pique your interest. Got them set up, but we can derail this and we can go in a different direction. If you've got an image in mind that you want to create today, then I can work with you and we can create a prompt and we can get it out the door very, very quickly. If not, we'll go with the default and we'll go what I've already set up. But before I get into these 3 things, what do you want to do, Kurt? Do you want to leave the questions till the end, or?
Yeah, I've had a couple of questions come through. So let's leave questions to the end, and we can crack on whilst we're still on a roll.
Perfect, great. Well, let's move into here. Right. So let's start with image generation, because what we'll do here is we'll start the engine. Typically, because images are a lot more complex to generate, it will take a little longer. So what I'll do is I'll kind of do my best Blue Peter impression. I'll pop this in the oven and then I'll come back and get it later once we've finished the other 2 little exercises. But what I've asked for here is prompts, and we're going to go into the world of prompts now. Prompts, more is always better. More details is better than none. So if I'm going to create a prompt, I'm always thinking about, say you got somebody in on work experience, dead keen, don't understand telecommunications, but want to get to understand it better, because the more you can teach them, the better they're going to be next time. And there's a way of doing that with AI as well called custom instructions, which you use in OpenGPT. It's essentially like, ChatGPT. You always use, say if you've got like a template, say, going back to the problem statement that we use for every project in BT Business. Once you get to a point where you've found the ideal output, you've tested prompts, you'll probably see some commonalities in the prompt. Custom instructions, like you set a template so that you just fill in the gaps and you're going to get a reliable output every time. Because prompts, it's a science. And I'm going to share in the pack with you a link to a course. If you're interested in prompts, holy grail of AI, generative AI, then you can do this course for free, audit it on Coursera. So all that coming up. But anyway, yeah, so I'll assume that we'll go ahead with what I've got, but I've got Show a UK red phone box with its door open to reveal inside a library full of vintage books. Starting to set a scene now. Kind of create a story for the AI, for DALL-E. And it's a combination of steampunk, I like a bit of steampunk, and the shop from Jumanji, the movie, and I'm dating myself there because it had Robin Williams in it. So I'll set that up now to get off. In fact, let me just go. Let's come back to that because that might take a while. Right, okay, so the next one is that I've got images, by the way, that I created using that prompt, so I'll show you in a sec anyway, so nothing lost. Right, so here's Bard, Google Bard, which is an LLM, and this is very similar to OpenAI's ChatGPT. And the prompt I've put in here is, who doesn't love Mr. Beast, apart from his food? Here's a video from Mr. Beast. So I'm pandering to Google now by shouting out YouTube, likes that. I want you to find out, this video is loads and loads of nations coming together in a competition to find out who's going to be the ultimate victor. But I don't want to watch the video. I just want to know what the answer is. The answer is not on the web. It's only in the video. So what I'm asking of this AI is, tell me who won. To do that, I need to give it not only the URL of the video, but I also need to give it the title. If I just give it the video URL, it'll go, can't find it. If you give it the title, there's no way out. So fingers crossed, this one works. Right, so there we go. According to the video, Syria won the race. Complete the obstacles, 1 minute, 40 seconds. Fantastic. Right, okay. Saved me 10 minutes, which is wonderful. So, the last thing I want to show you is data visualization. So what does that mean? Well, okay, so if you are, we talked before about analytics, if you want to pull some insights from data, how do you do it at the moment? Well, you can either pay $20 a month for ChatGPT and use the code interpreter plugin, but you don't want to do that because you can do that here for free, and not with BT data, by the way, with your own personal data. If you want to look at, I don't know, if you're like me and you're obsessed with the kitchen and you've got 150 recipes and you want to find out which ones have got courgettes in them, for example. But this one is from an open data store called data.gov.uk, and there are tons of different data sets that you can play around with in there. Export the CSV file. I'll show you that in the presentation. Upload it here, and then I've just put a quick prompt in saying, tell me some surprising insights and create a data visualization of the best fact you can find from it. So that's going to go off now and do its thing. While that's doing its thing, I'm just going to show you what I'm doing with the data, because that takes a while. Whereas Bard gives you everything in one hit, Claude, Bing, slowly set the scene for you. But anyway, it's already going into stuff, telling you some things that it found in the CSV file, which could theoretically take you hours of time. And here, crash course, you'll get it in 25, 30 seconds. What it's doing as well here is creating for you, I believe in Python, the visualization of that fact here. So in terms of a data visualization, here's a bar chart showing the total headcount by grade for the top 5 largest teams. You could ask it, once you've got the insights, to give you the code to create the data visualization for any of the insights, but it's just cherry picking one here. This is a different code to the code that I got last time I ran it, which was in JSON. So what I did then very quickly is I took a framework, I opened up a notepad file, essentially, and I added the data that I got from Claude into the framework, which created the chart for me in the browser. But going back to Claude, you could quite easily say, can you give me this code as JSON or as JavaScript or whatever? And it will do that, because if there's one thing AI is great at, it's code. I'm going to finish off my yabbering now to say this is the course that I mentioned, Prompt Engineering from Vanderbilt. It says enroll for free. Once you create an account at Coursera and log in, you'll have the opportunity to audit the course. You don't have to pay, you don't have to take out a trial. It's like a 6-week course, loads of different ways of learning prompts, gold dust. Get ahead of your colleagues, get ahead of the team, get ahead of the BT group, and get into that. That is it from me. I won't go back to the presentation. Thank you for enduring me. That was a lot of fun for me, selfishly. Great, and I'll see you guys for questions. And as I say, so much to learn, and I'll share the pack with you after this chat.
Thanks, David. That would be awesome. And please share the picture when it gets generated of the telephone box, because I'm desperate to see what that looks like. That was really, really interesting. And just to see it in an actual practical sense, I think we talk a lot about this stuff. We know it's out there and we know what it can do, but to actually see it working, that's the first time personally I've seen it. So yeah, really interesting. I had a couple of questions. One in the chat from Ben, just going back to the image generation stuff. So what are your personal thoughts on the ethical issues with image generation?
Well, I mentioned Getty. I think the major commercial image libraries are going to probably steal our thunder on this one. In my perspective, I've had this conversation with a lot of creators and a lot of artists who are justifiably frustrated because they can't. They had their moment in the sunshine with. I don't know if you guys remember when they were selling JPEGs under the auspices of crypto. Where they had the moment in the sun to sort of make big money off pictures of gorillas. These days, my personal perspective is somewhat craven and radical, which is we all create and end up on the web in some form or other, and we are being told through AI that we cannot claim copyright for any images that have been generated by AI. That's a very, very recent court ruling in the US. I think fair use comes into mind here. There's a almost like Creative Commons fair use policy, which has ruthlessly been applied by the makers of LLMs, whether or not the artists have agreed to it. And you'll remember that sort of that song that came out with The Weeknd, where it was essentially ripped off their vibe and recreated a song based on their sound. Essentially, it's a bit of a wild west, and it probably sounds like I'm not really giving an answer, but I want to see progress, and I think the courts, people like Getty, will end up with the LLMs being retrained on a much smaller model, which will result in a phenomenon called underfitting, which essentially means that the user won't get exactly what they want because the pool of training data has been significantly reduced. AI is here to stay. It's going to get better and better and better, irrespective of the direction of travel. I think there's kind of a middle ground, and I think because we are typically quite polarized on mostly everything these days, it's either going to be nothing or everything. We're not going to get away with everything. It's going to be difficult to go down further without any access to these sort of commercial images. I'd encourage people to sort of look more sort of perhaps more right of middle of the road towards progressive. But it's, we're going to see, there's going to be some big judgments in the next few weeks and months anyway. I think the LLMs will suffer. I think the quality will suffer. But then again, this hasn't been here long enough to kind of, help us feel as though it was here to stay anyway. So exciting times.
And you mentioned when you were talking about ChatGPT, are there different subscription packages to ChatGPT, or what can you get out of it for free, or is there, do I need to pay a certain fee to get this section, or how does that actually work?
Well, so there are lots of different ways that you can use LLMs, and I've just posted the image of our green phone box in the chat for what it's worth. And this was created just using DALL-E before on that, and this is a good example of free. So you can use most of the AIs in the public domain are free or freemium. So ChatGPT is a perfect example of the freemium model, where as you can do a lot of stuff with GPT 3.5, which is the earlier version of the large language model, which is, we talked briefly about parameters. It's about a tenth as sophisticated as GPT-4. You can use 3.5 for free at chat.openai.com. Probably forever, because it's great advertising for these guys and the cost is relatively small. Bing is completely free, bing.com. You can log in using your work account. We're going to have Bing Enterprise. Bing Chat Enterprise has just been launched yesterday to educators, which is safeguarding your data. So I talked earlier about things like keeping things private. Once we're able to use Microsoft 365 Copilot, that will be ring-fenced. No public data anywhere, nothing going out, nobody coming in. But the free stuff, Bing, Poe, Pi, Bard, Claude, these are all free to use unless you want to start sort of exploring the really sort of more extensive options. Like I say, ChatGPT's got something called Plus, which is $20 a month, which gives you plugins so you can extend the value of it. I think it does something with Hotel Tonight, so you can start using it to take care of all of your travel needs and pay $20 a month to get that. But by and large, all the pack as well has got all the links to all the free stuff that you can use outside of work on your own sort of personal bits and pieces.
Cool. Okie dokie. I do have a load of other questions. There's just one, probably got one more time for one in the chat, but I'll send you the other questions afterwards, David. Just from Dan, he says, how far behind do you think society is when it comes to generative AI? With deepfake video and voice getting incredibly advanced, where do we draw a line in the sand without censoring the creativity of the general public? Wow. We might need longer.
I feel like this is a question for Sam Altman. Yeah, need a fireside and a big leather sofa. It's a very, very, very good question, and there's a lot of panic. I probably take it into the world of work, and I want to sort of move it into where we are right now, because I think this is as much society or the tip of the spear as anywhere. Is There's a lot of concern about AI's intrusion, and there's two things here. A, we don't know what AI is going to be like next year, in terms of we don't know whether it's going to be switched off to us, we don't know whether it's going to be better and more efficient, we don't know whether it's going to be heavily pared back, and we essentially get a skeleton version. Although you keep hearing probably about the work that China's got its own AI LLM, which is as powerful, if not slightly more powerful than GPT-4. There's a lot of concerns about the idea that if we switch it off, then a lot of other nations will flourish and power forward, and will be left in the dust. But I think society, I think this is more of a sort of a learning exercise. I know we're doing a lot of work at the moment as BT with helping people to get better at everything digital in readiness for all IP stuff coming down the tracks very, very fast. I think a lot of this is going to be an education piece, and this is where, as people start to see the benefits of it, we only crossed the threshold of utility in March this year. We've not even got to the trough of disillusionment yet, where everybody's going, oh God, this is rubbish. We're not even there yet, but that's a natural sequence of events. I just think society has just got to at least have a fair crack of the whip at it, and with us being like less than 5 months from when anybody kind of ever heard of it, in the mainstream, it needs to be given at least another 6 months to figure things out, and the government's authorities don't even have a clue what to do with it yet. Is this a hype cycle? Is it another crypto? We don't really know, but we just know that it's already starting to be vaguely useful. So at least give it a try and make your own mind up about the value that it might offer to us as society.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like it's keeping you busy of an evening, so it's better than watching Coronation Street, isn't it? So.
Well, I'm being about celebs go dating at the moment. When you were talking about fake tans earlier, I'm like, is it Chloe or is it Lottie tonight? So yeah, I feel right at home in this group. You guys are great. But thank you for your patience as well, and do stay in touch. And with the pack, I'll drop you a line as well for my email address. You can find me on Teams anyway. So any more questions, happy to talk.